Intelligent beings, part snake and part human, can be found all across mythology and media. So why not give their speculative biology a go? Hey everyone! We've met sapient mammals and insects on our channel. So it's time reptiles got into the fun too with this look at Snakefolk. Please consider liking, hyping, and subscribing if you like this video. And now, without further ado, let's get started. We've met many kinds of sapient beings before, and the extent of the form civilization can take, and the kinds of creatures it can evolve from, never cease to amaze us. Today we meet one more example of this phenomenon. We generally call them by the name of Snakefolk, and they don't seem to mind the name, but after arduous translation efforts, they've chosen to give themselves the scientific name of Dracophili terravox. The ancestors of the Snakefolk were not snakes, but lacertilians, or lizards, which retained all four limbs. They evolved during the Cretaceous, and once the KPG extinction rolled around, the sudden disappearance of the then dominant reptiles allowed them to diversify and evolve, as happened with many other clades. While most of these were eventually outcompeted by mammals, these lizards thrived in certain warm regions, both arid and tropical. As all members of the clade were hypercarnivores, they presented a tendency towards size increase, improving their chances against similarly growing prey, and one particular clade, native to southeastern Asia, began using fast movements from their long tails to propel themselves forward, moving in a serpentine manner and using their jaws and forelimbs to catch their prey. While these ancestral reptiles developed long, hollow fangs that folded against the roof of the mouth and allowed for the injection of venom, their tendency towards size increase meant the usefulness of venom decreased over time, and these fangs became much more robust, used for a killing bite while their prey was held in place by the reptile's arms. Once they have fed, their distensible stomach and strong gastric acid would dissolve prey almost entirely, but these reptiles still needed to rest for a couple days after a good meal. As a result of their hunting style, the ancestors of Snakefolk underwent a gradual reduction of the hind limbs, their function having been replaced by their strong tail. In the present, all that's left of these limbs are two tiny claws, which are of great usefulness to grasp while mating, presenting a convergence with many true snakes. Their simultaneous increase in size and pursuit hunting led to the development of a four-chambered heart convergent with that of crocodilians. This structure separates oxygenated and non-oxygenated blood, improving blood flow and increasing the stamina of these huge hunters. The skin on their underside and their lamella-bearing palms would sense vibrations from potential prey, transmitting them to the columella to enable them to hear, so to speak, through these vibrations. Their eyes, in sharp contrast with those of true snakes, are lidded, presenting both a nictitating membrane to protect them while hunting and heavy, scaly eyelids that keep environmental hazards out. One particularly interesting adaptation of these reptiles was the development of a flaring hood formed from the neck's skin and muscle, somewhat convergent with that of cobras. This simple display served a similar function to that of its analog, making them look bigger to discourage potential predators or competitors. While its usefulness in this aspect decreased as their size increased, the fact that it also made for a great thermoregulatory structure meant it was kept as they evolved. Their success as predators and relative lack of competition led to a tendency towards size increase, and as they did, their tails grew increasingly more muscular and larger in proportion to the rest of their bodies, allowing them to keep moving despite their greater weight. Thanks to this increase in musculature, the tail became useful not only for ground movement, but also as an aid in climbing, although its efficacy does decrease as the weight of the individual goes up. On the ground, Snakefolk will alternate between an energy-efficient caterpillar-like, rectilinear motion when relaxed or stalking, fast lateral undulations to cover ground quickly, or a partially erect position when remaining stationary, as it allows for better use of their manipulatory limbs. This position is possible thanks to the hinge formed by their pelvis, which is still present, unlike in real snakes, and forms the lower half of the thoracic cage. This hinge separates the extremely flexible tail, reinforced with zygostine zygantrum joints, from the more stable and stiff torso, and this hybrid spine gives the snakefolk great mobility while providing them with upper body stability when using their arms and head for hunting or manipulation. As this happened, their hands developed into much more dexterous appendages to allow them to hold on to prey, eventually leading to the development of two opposable thumbs to improve their grasping ability. Their general increase in size also led to a tendency towards case selection, reducing their number of offspring and allocating greater amounts of resources and parental care to the remaining young, thus improving their chances of survival. These two factors also increased the size and development time of the eggs, until snakefolk would develop complete ovovivipory, holding the eggs within their bodies until they hatch and giving birth to living young, thus greatly reducing risks posed by both predators and their environment. As an adaptation to this mode of reproduction, females tend to be much larger, easily measuring a couple feet more than males when standing in an erect position. Males, for their part, will have their head and hood covered in protrusions that make them look more intimidating, as they will guard the periphery of the nest to stop intruders from reaching the female. While the ancestors of snakefolk were already very intelligent animals, owing to their need to strategize and assess risks when hunting, this intelligence would have meant nothing without a need to share information or coordinate with others. Only as their reproductive habits became more taxing, this brought an incentive for intraspecies cooperation, which started with birthing and care of their young, and extended to hunting and caring after one another, thus creating conditions where a proper language and sharing of ideas could arise. Such communication was achieved by vibrating their ventral muscles in very precise ways, sending information that would be transmitted through the ground and detected by other members of their species, with most prey and predators being unable to perceive them. This method, however, was a bit limited, and as the snakefolk began communicating increasingly complex ideas, they supplemented these vibrations with body movements, including those performed with the hands and jaw, the tip of their tail, and flaring of their hood. Like most lacertilians, snakefolk are incapable of proper vocalization, but they will hiss when expressing extreme emotions, a holdover from this being used as part of a threat display. While they themselves cannot actually hear these hisses, other organisms can, and through their interactions with other sapiens, the snakefolk have learned to use them for limited communication. The development of language and the flow of knowledge favored the creation of the first tools, as their dexterous hands were by now well adapted to finer manipulation. The combination of communication skills and increasing technology capabilities gave them the final push they needed towards sapience. While newborn snakefolk are precocial, already developed enough to move and feed on their own, these young require an extended period of time to learn language, tool use, basic manners and social behavior, as well as other kinds of important knowledge, as happens with many other sapiens. This, of course, helped consolidate the social life of snakefolk, with their settlements and relations becoming much more long-term, which allowed for the beginnings of a shared culture and ways of life, many elements of which would be retained as the species traveled and settled all across the world. During this process, clashes with other civilizations were to be expected, a situation similar to that of orcs. Upon first contact, snakefolk were demonized due to their reptilian appearance, which, to the uninformed, betrayed a cold and uncaring demeanor. This, as you may realize, is absolute nonsense, and while our different living conditions did not allow for full integration, relations between snakefolk and other sapiens are much better in the present. And that's it for a speculative biology look into snakefolk, with a thank you to Jackson Younger for commissioning it and working on it with me. And some of you may wonder why these fellas aren't evolved from snakes. And that's for the simple reason snake people tend to have two huge details that aren't usually found in snakes. Arms. And before anyone says Hox genes, that's not how Hox genes work. They aren't going to magically give organisms a fully functional new set of limbs, and the inherent disadvantages of suddenly limbed organisms in a larger population have been explored before. So the best way to go about this was starting with a limbed organism and go from there, somewhat mirroring the evolution of actual snakes, but in a way that gave their retention of the forelimbs an advantage. I also took care to point how brood care and cooperation would need to be accounted for during the rise of sapiency, and how this would shape their society, especially since some people out there still believe reptiles are cold and unfeeling in this year of our Lord 2026. So, I hope y'all had fun with this go at snake people, and here's a thank you to everyone who wanted to see this episode. I may have forgotten some, but you'll realize there were a lot of possible ways to ask for this episode, given the amount of creatures that fit this archetype, and I may have forgotten to search for some of them. Also, huge thank you to our researchers and research associates who support us through Patreon and YouTube memberships, and again to Jackson for commissioning it. Remember, you too can join in if you want to support our channel. And you can get some nice perks too, like seeing all of our creatures and videos ahead of time and helping mold them into shape. Or you can also like, subscribe, or write a comment telling me any type of creature you would like me to give the spec Evo treatment in the show. Any of those really help the channel a lot. Thank you all for watching, and see you next time on the Speculative Wildlife Research Center.